I know. I'm extremely smart. I'm extremely intelligent, and you all can thank me for warning you about what you were going to face in Starkville this week. The poll question is up. Are you impressed with Tennessee's win at Mississippi State? And you can either vote yes, Caleb is brilliant for warning about Mississippi State, or no, the Vols are in trouble. You guys go ahead and give your thoughts on that. I told you this was going to be a tough game. I said that from the start of the year. I said it was a very dangerous matchup, one that you did not want Tennessee to deal with. But the Vols, with Joey Aguilar and his clutch gene, in spite of Josh Heupel's miscues in terms of offensive play calling with clock management, which is an issue, by the way, they found a way to pull it out because Joey Aguilar is clutch. Welcome to the program. Tennessee pulls out a 41-34 victory over Mississippi State on the road in Starkville. It is Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. It is our post-game reaction. The show is brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast to you live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. The Vols pull out a 41-34 win over Mississippi State on the road. It is the second overtime game they have played in 5 weeks. They've played 2 SEC games. Both of them have gone into overtime. They are now 1-1 after losing at home to Georgia 2 weeks ago in overtime. They pull out this one. And honestly, the game shouldn't have even been that close. I will say this much. Tennessee should have won that game comfortably in regulation. Josh Heupel's mismanagement of the clock was a problem. We obviously can talk about the miscues, but most notably, SEC officiating was the problem. And we all know about what happened with Auburn and Oklahoma last week. It was worse this week in Starkville. There was a pass interference call on Colton Hood that was one of the worst pass interference calls I had ever seen in the history of college football, and it would have gone down as one of the worst pass interference calls I had ever seen in the history of college football until later in the game when Chris Brazzell caught a clear-as-day touchdown pass in which both players were fighting for the ball, and they called an offensive pass interference on Chris Brazzell. Anybody with eyes could have seen in regulation that was not an offensive pass interference. However, I understand if you thought in real time that was an offensive pass interference and that it would have been better on replay. You are not a paid SEC official. It is high time the SEC spend a lot more money to upgrade their officiating because this is getting unacceptable. You cannot make that mistake. That was a clear as day, clean touchdown reception. That is one of the worst pass interference calls in the history of pass interference calls of all time. And it beat the second worst pass interference call I had ever seen, which was earlier in the week when Tennessee, or earlier in the game, when Colton Hood had a pass interference call called on him. This was humiliating. And kudos to Josh Heupel for keeping his cool because that was a horrible, horrible, horrible pass interference. And Unsung says a great point. They threw the flag after he scored. How do you throw the flag after somebody scores? How do you do that? Okay. If you see a flag, you throw it in the moment, regardless of what the outcome of the play is. That's the rule. And you call an offensive pass interference in the worst moment. Regardless, Tennessee pulls out the win. Tennessee gets a win while they are seriously banged up. And as they're about to go into their bye week, the bye week could not come at a better time. I told you guys earlier in the week that they may clinch a college football playoff berth with this win at Mississippi State. I'll talk about that later in the week. We're going to just talk about the game in this one. But I will say this. To pull out the win now, in overtime, by hook or crook, and it wasn't by crook, by the way, because if anybody was going to win by crook, it was Mississippi State. Tennessee is now 4-1 heading into the bye week, and I'm sure they feel like they should be 5-0, and they're right to feel like they should be 5-0. But they are 4-1. Joey Aguilar pulls through for Tennessee, and not just Joey Aguilar, but a lot of guys and a lot of players pull through for Tennessee. We're going to talk about all of them on this program. A huge win for Tennessee, a thrilling win. Tennessee with a clutch victory. So Adam says, I have an insider working in Vegas. Adam, I don't. Believe it or not, Adam, I predicted Tennessee would cover in this game. So I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be humble. I was wrong. I thought Tennessee would cover because I thought they would take the game more seriously, having lost to Georgia, knowing this road matchup. But I also knew Mississippi State was dangerous. It's not I picked this at the beginning of the year. It has nothing to do with me knowing about Tennessee or Mississippi State or anything. if you follow Mississippi State football, when they are good, they are a dangerous, dangerous team at home. And so for Tennessee to pull out this win was a huge deal. So the poll question up right now, you guys can go ahead and vote on it. Are you impressed with Tennessee's win at Mississippi State? Yes, Caleb is smart for MSU warning. So if you say yes, you have to acknowledge I'm smart. That's what I'm doing now here. If you say you are impressed with Tennessee's win at MSU, you're acknowledging that I am intelligent for warning you guys that this was going to be a tough game. Or no, Tennessee is in trouble. So either way, Tennessee ends up winning this game. Adam, I agree. If the game goes to OT, the spread should get canceled. I agree, but Tennessee didn't cover it. Tennessee was favored by 7.5. That was the big point. But again, hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend, because this was a thrilling victory. Guys, look, it was a tough game. I told you guys from the start of the year, it was going to be one of the toughest games Tennessee was going to face all season. To pull out the win is pulling out the win. You've got to give credit where credit is due. That was a great win for Tennessee. We got our takeaways coming up. We got our torchbearers coming up. We got our report card coming up, and we got our turning points coming up. So there's a lot to talk about. A lot of you guys are saying that Tennessee should be thanking the fact that they don't have Nico Iamaleava. I see a few of you guys. I'm sorry, I can't get it on the message boards right now, but you guys, I will agree with you on this. Even though I've talked about how I think Nico Iamaleava still would have been good in this system this year, we're kind of underrating how much better the system overall is than it was last year beyond just Nico Iamaleava. I'm not so sure Nico Iamaleava pulls this game out. And so I will say that up front. So hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications, tell a friend. Let's get rolling with the recap of the game. And these are our 5 biggest takeaways from Tennessee's win over Mississippi State. And the first takeaway is this: Tennessee brought the pressure. I had a hunch that Mississippi State wasn't good at protecting the quarterback, and the signs of that were there when they faced Arizona State and gave up 3 sacks. Boy, were they bad at protecting Blake Shapen, and Tennessee took advantage of it. Tyree Weathersby, Caleb Herring, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West, all were part of sacks in this game. Beyond that, they had 5 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss. Most notably, the play of the game, one of the plays of the game, Tyree West strip sacked Blake Shapen, and Joshua Joseph returned it for a touchdown. The pass rush was incredible. Give the pass rush credit. They did their job in this game. They did an incredible job. The pass rush was absolutely insane, and you have got to give them credit for what happened there. The pass rush was incredible. That stood out. I had a hunch that would be a good part of Tennessee's game plan in this one. Man, I didn't think it would be that good. I'm not going to give myself that much credit for that. I did not see Tennessee having that good of a pass rush. That was incredible. They don't have James Pierce, and their pass rush was as good as it's ever been. That was impressive. That is one of the biggest takeaways from Tennessee's 41-34 overtime win over Mississippi State. The other takeaway, and this ties into the other takeaway: defensive scores, opportunistic defense. What's it General Nealon said? Play for, make the breaks, and when one comes our way, score. That was a maxim Tennessee fully lived up to in this game. Okay, they scored multiple touchdowns on defense. It started in the first half when Colton Hood had a pick 6, which was a huge one. And I just talked about Joshua Joseph returning a fumble for a touchdown in the second half. 2 defensive touchdowns in this game for a team that is known for offense, by the way. Okay. And they still score 2 defensive touchdowns. Look, how many games are you going to see that have to go to overtime with a quarterback that throws for 330 yards and a defense that scores 2 touchdowns? That's that's got to be one of the oddest stat lines you will ever witness in the history of college football, or NFL for that matter. When a defense scores 2 touchdowns and the quarterback throws for over 300 yards, you would assume that's a blowout win. But Tennessee needed overtime to win this one because Mississippi State, with Jeff Levy, was resilient. But at the end of the day, Tennessee made the plays where they were necessary. Another takeaway. We got to go to some negatives real quick. Butterfingers for Tennessee football, and they have got to fix these issues. Braylon Staley fumbled a punt. We talked about Boo Carter fumbling a punt against UAB, and now here comes Braylon Staley fumbling a punt on the next week. Muffed punts are a problem. They have got to stop that. Braylon Staley cannot be fumbling punts. He also dropped a pass, by the way, in the game. And so that was really, really bad. So Braylon Staley fumbling a punt was bad enough. Also, Mike Matthews, we're forgetting this. There was a drive in the first half where, I mean, I know he had over 100 receiving yards, but Joey Aguilar threw a clear as day touchdown pass to Mike Matthews, and he dropped it. You cannot drop that. You have got to make that catch. Mike Matthews is a 5-star wide receiver. You got to make that catch. You got to. There's no excuse not to. And finally, Miles Kitselman. I get those were tough throws. They were darts over the middle, but Joey Aguilar threw 2 interceptions because they bounced off Miles Kitselman's hands and landed in somebody else's hands. You can't. You are there to make those catches. I get they're tough, but you are a big body. You can shield off receivers. You got to come down with those balls. Miles Kitselman not making those catches is a huge problem. And with that in mind, Miles Kitselman dropping those, that is a huge issue. So the drops by Miles Kitselman, the 2 drops, the drop by Mike Matthews, the fumble by Braylon Staley, and another drop by Braylon Staley, you have got to talk about the issues regarding the receivers and dropping things in general. Butterfingers are problematic. More importantly, now, I don't know where to go with this. You can maybe make this 2 takeaways, but I'm going to make it 1. Games are being made close by clock mismanagement and horrible officiating. I just talked about the horrible officiating, the horrible pass interference calls in this game. You cannot make those mistakes. You cannot call a pass interference on Colton Hood in the first half. Now, everybody's forgetting that because of what happened on Chris Braswell in the second half. But the Colton Hood pass interference was just honestly, I don't think we should let it's a Howard Stern effect. Let me do something more outrageous to cover for something that was pretty outrageous to begin with. That was bad enough, okay? But obviously the pass interference on Chris Braswell, the offensive pass interference, was absolutely atrocious, okay? And both of them were bad. But we're talking about decision-making, my people here, and a big bit of decision-making that comes into play here is the coaching by Josh Heupel, and it's time to really call that out. Tennessee had a chance to score at the end of the first half after Mississippi State had multiple incompletions and then ran it for 9 yards by Fluff Bothwell on third down. It was 4th and 1 at the Mississippi State 37. There were roughly, I would say, 45 seconds left. Tennessee had all 3 timeouts. You use a timeout and you try to get the ball back. That was horrible coaching by Josh Heupel. You try to get the ball back. Now, maybe they would have gone for it and Josh Heupel was nervous about that. I think you take that chance, honestly. I think you take that chance. And then the way he coached the end of the game was absolutely atrocious. Okay, to run the ball on first down and then let the clock run all the way down, not use a timeout, and then decide, I'm going to play for a game-winning field goal. You have to go all in or not, okay? That was really bad in-game management. So in-game decisions by the coaching and the officiating were costing the players in this game. And I mean, Josh Heupel and the refs were both costing the players in this game. That was horrible. And I will say this, and I agree with every one of you guys on the message board, which is that the in-game coaching was horrible. The in-game officiating was horrible. That needs to be reviewed. Okay, so that's one of the big takeaways. Another takeaway, though. Let's go to the final takeaway. Let's go to the final takeaway of this game, which is that Joey Aguilar's clutch. All right, I know he threw 2 picks. I don't know if he has a pick this year that's his fault, by the way. But Joey Aguilar has led 2 effective game-winning drives this year. When I say effective, I mean Joey Aguilar has done his part to get his team in position to win a game at the end of regulation, and both times they failed, to be fair. This time it was because of a couple of other issues not related to him, a missed block down here, Braylon Staley not making a play when he threw it deep, stuff like that. And then the other one was against Georgia. Joey Aguilar is clutch. But beyond that, beyond just effectively leading a game-winning drive, let's not forget that Joey Aguilar, with the team down 34-27 in regulation, led a 13-play, 75-yard drive to score a touchdown. Joey Aguilar is ultimate clutch. Ultimate clutch. He is incredible. You have got to give Joey Aguilar credit for what he was able to do in this game. Joey Aguilar, in my opinion, being as clutch as he is the story. As we all know, in overtime, I think by the time overtime came, and I don't think Heupel was too worried about this. I think he knew, because I was going to say one of my takeaways was that Mississippi State controlled the line of scrimmage, and they did. Fluff Bothwell ran for 135 yards. The team ran for 198 yards. But it felt like towards the end of the game, they got tired, and Tennessee was deeper in the trenches. Hence the reason Deshaun Bishop had his 25-yard touchdown run in overtime to change everything. I think Mississippi State was just too tired by that point, and that's how Tennessee was able to pull out the victory. So again, hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. It is time for our turning points and key moments in Tennessee's 41-34 victory over Mississippi State in overtime. And in a game like this, you could have about 10 turning points, but I always limit myself because that's what I do. And there were only 5 turning points I could pick in this game. And I always pick the turning points for the winning team. So what are the 5 turning points for Tennessee in this game? Well, the first obvious one is Colton Hood's pick 6 in the first quarter. Remember, Tennessee was trailing 7-3. They had muffed a punt to set up Mississippi State's first touchdown and only got a field goal on their first drive and then had to punt on their second drive. It looked like Mississippi State could control this game. And Blake Shapen threw an interception to Colton Hood for a touchdown in the first quarter to give Tennessee a 10-7 lead. Very reminiscent, for those who don't know history, and I don't know how many of you do, very reminiscent the first quarter was of Tennessee's SEC championship game victory over Mississippi State in 1998. So for those of you who may be too young to remember, T. Martin spotted MSU a 7-0 lead in that game because he threw a pick 6 early. And then Tennessee got their own interception to set up a touchdown, and they got a field goal to make it 10-7. Very similar to how this worked, was both teams scored off turnovers, and then there was a field goal that was the difference for Tennessee. A lot more high scoring this one was than that one back in 1998, because that Mississippi State offense was horrible with Wayne Mackin, and that defense was elite with Joe Lee Dunn running it. Anyways, that's the first big turning point of the game. The second one, goes all the way to the fourth quarter. You're talking about a back and forth game. And then you've got the Joshua Josephs fumble return TD off the Tyree West strip sack for 41 yards. Don't forget this. I want to know how many people remember this. Tennessee was forced to punt on the previous drive. Mississippi State had the ball. They were up 24-20. It was 4th and 7 at the Mississippi State 33. Tennessee was certain they were going to get the ball back. And Jeff Levy, at the perfect time, called a fake punt. Sam West ran it for 15 yards to the Mississippi State 48. It was near midfield. You thought for sure Mississippi State had complete control of that game. That fake punt gave them the ball 1st and 10 near midfield early in the fourth quarter, up 24-20. They could really punch it on Tennessee's throat. And on the very next play, Tyree West sacks Blake Shapen, strip sacks him. Joshua Josephs recovers the fumble, runs it 41 yards the other way for a touchdown. That was a huge play, and it did help people forget about the horrible off-the-pass interference call on Tennessee on the drive before, which nullified what should have been a touchdown to Chris Brazzell. That's a rather big turning point. Now, the next turning point is, and people are forgetting this, so after that touchdown, Mississippi State goes down for a field goal. Tennessee throws an interception, sets up another Mississippi State touchdown. It's 34-27. Tennessee mounts a 13-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. And I think of one of the most brilliant coaching strategies by Joey Halzle and Josh Heupel all year. They played for 4 downs. It was 1st and 10 at the Tennessee 47. They call a screen to Mike Matthews. Then they call a run to Star Thomas. You could tell if you watch that, they had a plan the whole time to throw a pass over the middle, because then they call another swing pass to Star Thomas to get it to 4th and 4. And then on 4th and 4, they have Joey Aguilar throw an aggressive pass over the middle to Chris Brazzell for 11 yards. A gutsy call. It was a little bit behind Chris Brazzell, but Chris Brazzell's hands were able to bring it down. They trusted their players, and it came through. The 4th and 4 11-yard completion to Chris Brazzell is one of the most underrated plays of the game. That is one of the turning points. And then the final 2 turning points. Well, one was the Deshaun Bishop 25-yard touchdown run on the first drive, on the first play of overtime. I'm going to say something that's kind of crazy. I think specifically with that turning point, I think Tennessee is very lucky. Not lucky, I wouldn't say, but I think Tennessee it actually worked out better for them that they got the ball first to start overtime. Why? Because they had mounted a potential game-winning drive at the end of regulation that ended up not working out, but it kept the defense tired. So for them to get the ball to start overtime too, the Mississippi State defense was totally tired, and Tennessee got to pick to play on the side away from the Mississippi State suited section. So that coin toss that favored Mississippi State because they chose to go on defense first at overtime, honestly, if I'm Mississippi State, I would have deferred that and chosen to go on my own side where the fans were, because I don't think it was going to benefit them that much to go on defense. I think they were so tired. So for Tennessee to be able to go on offense and to be able to play away from the suited section was a huge win. And then the final turning point was Tennessee getting the stop in overtime, the 4th down stop on Blake Shapen to pull out the 41-34 win. So a huge victory, a huge turning point for Tennessee. That was very impressive. You have to give them a lot of credit on that. All right. So moving on, our torchbearers from Tennessee's win over Mississippi State. And man, we got a lot of them. I'm going to start with Colton Hood. Our torchbearers in Tennessee's 41-34 overtime win over Mississippi State. The leader of this group is Colton Hood. Colton Hood had a pick 6 in the game. It was a crucial pick 6, and it was early, and it sparked things for Tennessee, which was struggling offensively in the first half. You got to give Colton Hood credit. The pick 6 was a huge deal. Colton Hood's pick six allows him a spot on our list as one of the torchbearers. That play alone was so big. You just can't undersell how big, even though, and by the way, he also had 2 tackles for a loss. He had 2 tackles for a loss and a pick 6, was all over the field, 6 total tackles, 4 solo. Now, tackles is not the best stat for a cornerback specifically, but when 2 of them are tackles for a loss, they are. So Colton Hood is one of our torchbearers, one of the players of the game, balled out for Tennessee. Our next torchbearer is this, and it's an underrated one, but it is not really underrated. I apologize for that. He is Tyree West. Now, I want to give an honorable mention on this one to Joshua Josephs, who had 1.5 tackles for a loss and returned a fumble for a touchdown. And I also want to give a shout out to Caleb Herring, who had 1.5 sacks. However, the star of the defensive line, by the way, more shout outs. Bryson Easton had half a tackle for a loss and a pass deflection. Tyree Weathersby had half a tackle for a loss. Got to give them all credit. And with Colton Hood, when I want to go back, I want to give Jalen McMurray a credit too for a tackle for a loss and a pass deflection. But the biggest star up front was Tyree West, who had 2 sacks on the day, 3 tackles overall, 2 solo, both sacks, and had a strip sack that changed the game that Joshua Josephs recovered for a touchdown. Tyree West deserves a huge shout out for his play. He is a torchbearer for Tennessee. Our next torchbearer is Chris Brazzell II. Now, Tennessee had 200 yards receivers. Mike Matthews had 6 catches for 118 yards. Chris Brazzell had 6 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown alone is not what puts Chris Brazzell on this list. Mike Matthews deserves a shout out, though. The touchdown and the fact that he didn't have any drops. He had key clutch catches throughout the game. Mike Matthews, despite his play, and he deserves a lot of credit, Mike Matthews had a bad drop. Mike Matthews had a bad drop in the first half that would have resulted in a touchdown and would have given 150 yards receiving and a touchdown. Braylon Staley had a couple of nice catches, but at the end of the day, he had a bad drop and a fumble punt return. And Miles Kitselman, to his credit, despite the 2 drops that resulted in interceptions, he also had 4 catches for 42 yards. He's just got to be better with his hands. But Chris Brazzell is the star of the receivers. Back to the defense real quick. Arian Carter. Guys, let's give the man some credit. All right. I have been very, very, very critical. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but Tennessee's defense wasn't good throughout the game. I disagree. Tennessee held Mississippi State to 378 total yards, including overtime, 378 total yards, and they forced multiple turnovers. There were other issues involved of why Mississippi State scored 34 points, most notably Tennessee's offense, turning the ball over. Okay. Defense was largely fine in a lot of ways, and Arian Carter finally emerged for Tennessee in the way we've expected him to. He had 17 total tackles, 6 of which were solo, to go with a pass deflection. Major shout out to Arian Carter. Arian Carter is a star. He balled out for Tennessee in this game. 17 tackles, 6 of which were solo, and a pass deflection. Arian Carter is a torch bearer. And finally, the torchbearer is Joey Aguilar. 24 40, 335 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions, but also ran for 21 yards and another touchdown. And neither interception was his fault. He had 356 total yards. Joey Aguilar steps up in SEC games. Homeboy steps up in SEC games. He averaged 8.4 yards per attempt, and he was a baller in this game. You got to give him credit. I mean, Joey Aguilar is a little reckless sometimes, and we're still going to point that out. But while he's reckless, he is also fun to watch, and he is clutch, and you have to give him the credit he deserves. Joey Aguilar coming through, completing 60% of his passes for 335 yards, averaging 8.5 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, while also running for a touchdown and 21 rushing yards. So those are the torchbearers for Tennessee and their 41-34 win over Mississippi State. The report card for Tennessee and their 41-34 win over Mississippi State in overtime. Quarterback play is an A-. I know Joey Aguilar threw 2 interceptions. Neither were his fault. He did miss a couple of other ones. He maybe didn't have to be as aggressive with those throws, but overall, A-. He came through. He balled out. Running back play for Tennessee. And this may be controversial because it didn't seem like Tennessee ran the ball that well, but I'm going to go B+. I had B- for regulation, but the way the game ended with Deshaun Bishop running for 72 yards, having that 25-yard run, outweighs the Star Thomas 33 yards and the Peyton Lewis 10 yards. That it was enough for Tennessee for me to give them a B+. There were a lot of issues on why they didn't run the ball as well. So I'm going to give the running backs a B+. Wide receivers, also a B+. Now, it should be an A. Wide receivers should be an A. But unfortunately for the wide receivers, Braylon Staley had a couple of bad drops, and Mike Matthews had a horrible drop. I can't overlook those. Chris Brazzell kept this thing being a B+, okay? But I'm giving more credit to Joey Aguilar than I am the wide receivers for the play in this game because the drops were not acceptable. Tight end play is a C-. Maybe that's a little bit too friendly with the Miles Kitselman drops, but he also had 4 catches for 41 yards. Actually, I take that back. Now I'm gonna go D+ for tight ends. I'm gonna go down to D+. I think if you're a tight end, if you are a Tennessee fan, if you are a Tennessee player, coach, quarterback, the biggest thing you expect for your tight ends is to have the hands. You don't expect them to win the battles on the outside or anything like that. You expect them to catch the ball when they're thrown their way. They are the ultimate. If you can touch it, you can catch it type of receiver. So for Miles Kitselman to drop 2 passes is unacceptable. D+. Now here's my biggest one that's going to be controversial, which is the offensive line. Offensive line gets a C-, and they should be grateful it's not worse. Because not only was Joey Aguilar sacked twice, but until overtime where they wore him down, they did not run the ball well. It was a problem all game. And I think because of that, offensive line is going to get a C-. Or a couple of penalties that were crucial also. And I think that might even be too friendly, to be fair. On the other side, defensive line gets a C-. Again, finished the game strong. Bryson Eason, I think, played well. Jackson Moy was okay in his game back. Jackson Moy, though, had 2 tackles. Bryson Eason assisted on a tackle for a loss. I think Tennessee wanted a little bit more for their defensive line. And Mississippi State ran the ball for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. Fluff Bothwell, 23 carries for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devon Booth, 17 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. I don't think that is exactly what Tennessee was expecting. So when you take that into account, I think that the defensive line has to get a C-. But the edge rushers get an A. Edge rushers get an A. And the defensive ends with Dominic Bailey and Tyree West and Tyree Weathersby, those are effective edge rushers. They're like half edge rushers, half defensive line. They got a lot of plays around the edge, so you got to give them the credit. But Joshua Josephs with the touchdown, Caleb Herring with the 1.5 sacks. I mean, the edge rushers for Tennessee were elite in this game, and you have to give them all the credit in the world. Going into the linebackers, again, B+. Not the best in pass coverage, particularly Jeremiah Thielander, but That's made up for how Aaron Carter was all over the field. So I give the linebackers a B+. Defensive backs, C+. Actually, I'm going to give defensive backs a B. I think they could have been better in defending the pass. But at the same time, I'm actually going to go all the way up to an A-. I think defensive backs were really, really good in this game. Yes, they could have been better, but Blake Shapen was held to just 6 yards an attempt, 18 to 29 for 180 yards. I don't know why I was so hard on them earlier. No, they're an A-. The Colton Hood pick 6 was a huge deal. Shapen was slightly efficient, but overall, I'm going to give the defensive backs a lot of credit. A- is, yeah, I think defensive backs played very, very, very well. Place kicking in this game, sorry, it's a D. It's a D because that other Max Gilbert missed. Now, if you guys watch that Max Gilbert field goal, I get he hit his other 2 attempts, hit every extra point, and the kickoffs by Josh Turbeville were elite. But special teams and place kicking oftentimes comes down to the specific plays when they matter. And when they mattered, Max Gilbert was needed for a field goal. He came up short. Not Max Gilbert's fault if you go back and watch it, okay? If you go back and watch it, Max Gilbert's the biggest issue for that was the snap. The snap was low, it was bobbled, and Max Gilbert had to wait to go kick it. That is what held it back. That is why kicking gets a D. Punting, though, gets an A. Jackson Ross had 3 punts. He only averaged 43 yards a punt, but all 3 punts pinned Mississippi State inside the 20-yard line. Major shout out to Jackson Ross for that. But on the other end, return game, F. Straight up F. Straight up F. Boo Carter returned 1 punt for a yard. He worked really hard for that 1 yard. But beyond that, Braylon Staley fumbles a punt, a negative 7-yard return with a fumble that sets up a Mississippi State touchdown. And then Mississippi State also on another punt fakes it to get a first down. That counts as the return game. Tennessee's return game was enough. It was absolutely horrible. They got to be better. Now, in terms of coaching, offensive play calling, I go A-. I think Joey Halsley did a very... No, sorry. I got that mixed up. I go B-. I think Joey Halsley did a very good job overall calling the game. There were some mistakes, but I think he did a good job. How about that? I think he did a good job, but I do think there were also times where he should have... there were things he should have done differently at different points in the game, particularly late on that final drive. He could have been a lot better with how he handled things. Defensive play calling, A-. Look, again, Tennessee's defense effectively gave up 20 points in regulation. They didn't give up 34. You cannot blame Tim Banks for that. Everybody was hating on Tim Banks in regulation. They gave up 20 points in regulation, and they held Mississippi State to under 400 yards of offense. What more do you want? Tim Banks was fine calling plays, and his zone coverages in which they brought the pressure resulted in a pick 6 and a strip sack for a touchdown. What more do you want? That's exactly what you want him to do. He trusted his players to make plays. They made plays. I think defensive play calling is an A-. Offensive play calling is a B-. I think overall head coaching grade, though, is a C. And it's not because of the play calling. It's because of the clock management. Josh Heupel's clock management was absolutely atrocious, and it stood out. So where does Tennessee go from here? Tennessee obviously has a bye that they desperately need. The bye week could not come at a better time. I think Tennessee, and by the way, refs do get enough caution. You are absolutely right on that. I think Tennessee, with this bye, it's the perfect time. They can get fully healthy. We're talking Jamal McCoy. We're talking Jamal McCoy. We're talking David Hobbs, Jackson Moy 100%, David Sanders Jr., who was out on this game and committed a penalty because he was a freshman, could get to 100%. Then they could play the Arkansas game to get better. Arkansas is done. They have quit on the season. If you guys watched them against Notre Dame today, they got blown out. It is over for them. Tennessee is going to torch them. The biggest thing for Tennessee is to make sure they absolutely blow out Arkansas, get those guys in rhythm, and they will be 100% when they go to Tuscaloosa to face Alabama. But the truth of the matter is Tennessee is in great shape. They could not ask for better shape. Now, of course, the best shape they could have been in would have been had Max Gilbert made that field goal against Georgia and they were 5-0 going into this weekend. He didn't. They're 4-1. However, they now can get healthy. They have the chance to get healthy. And if they can get healthy into the bye week just comes at the perfect time. I told you guys, all they had to do was get past this week. Just get past this week and everybody get healthy and they'll be in great shape. They did that. They now have a great chance to pull out a huge win. So we'll see how this goes, but it is a great, great win for Tennessee. They score a 41-34 victory over Mississippi State. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones up by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, New and used. Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. I will be back on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern because we broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. This was a special presentation of Off the Hook Sports with the recap, a special presentation that we do every Saturday after Tennessee football games. This is our live recap. Thank you guys all for tuning in. If you're a Tennessee fan, enjoy this win. Go out, party. Enjoy the fact that you got a bye. And then obviously Tennessee needs this bye. They get to relax. They are riding momentum. They are happy. You be happy too. I will see you guys all on Monday. Thanks for tuning in with Caleb Calhoun. This has been a presentation of